Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Forum, a weekly program for the Columbus Metro Club, where we cultivate conversations and connections that truly drive our region forward. The Forum brings together visionary leaders, CEOs, members of Congress, college presidents, UN ambassadors, artists, and change makers to examine issues that matter, exchange diverse perspectives, and forge connections that create a much better Columbus. My name is Sophia Pfiffner. I'm the president and CEO of the Columbus Metropolitan Club. And for those of you who are joining via our live stream, we're coming to you from the National Veterans Memorial and Museum in downtown Columbus. We'd like to thank Downtown Columbus Incorporated for providing today's complimentary parking. We'd like to thank our presenting sponsors of our live stream, the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation, and our live stream partner, the Columbus Dispatch. We're also incredibly grateful to the National Veterans Memorial Museum for hosting every single CMC forum. It takes a tremendous village, and we'd like to thank all of our partners and sponsors. Let's give them a round of applause. Today's forward-looking conversation is how a billion-dollar ballot will reshape Columbus. On Tuesday, November 4th, Columbus voters will weigh in on one of the biggest bond packages in our city's history. That's right, the biggest ever. $1.9 billion to fund neighborhood investments, infrastructure, affordable housing, public safety, and more. Today's conversation will unpack what's at stake on the ballot this November and what it will mean to our city's future. And now, please help me in welcoming today's distinguished panelist, Columbus City Councilmember Nick Bankston, Charlie Booz, Executive Director of the Affordable Housing Alliance of Central Ohio, our moderator, Mark Ferenchik, News Director of WOSU 89.7 NPR News, and Mayor Andrew J. Ginther, Mayor of the City of Columbus. All right, to set the stage for today's panel conversation, please welcome to the podium Mayor Andrew J. Ginther.
Good afternoon. What a fabulous day here in the city of Columbus. So glad to be here. This is the first time I think I've been at a Metropolitan Club event here at NVMM. So I want to thank Dr. Bertley and Colonel Butler and all of the team here at NVMM that have opened up their doors and hosted us for this conversation here today. I want to thank Councilmember Bankston, Carlie, and Mark for being part of this conversation. So this may be a little boring for most of you that have been plugged in and highly engaged in things, but I feel like I got to do a little bond package 101, right? Because we have so many more people that have come to our community in the last couple of years, and want to share a little bit about how these bond packages work, and most importantly, that the city has not levied a property tax through our bond package efforts and capital improvements since 1956 because of the way this is set up. So we're here to discuss this historic $1.9 billion package, as Sophia mentioned, the largest in Columbus's history. It goes on the ballot this November 4th. Issues 5 through 9 will finance capital improvements in neighborhoods across the city, again, without raising taxes. And there's so many benefits to this $1.9 billion package. It will continue to position Columbus for a bright future as our population grows. There's $500 million for neighborhood development and affordable housing, $250 million for safety, health, and infrastructure, $250 million for recreation and parks, $400 million for public service, and $500 million for public utilities. These ballot measures allow the city to sell bonds to investors and use the proceeds to finance improvements. To repay the debt, the city places 25% of income taxes collected and a portion of utility bill income in a special income tax fund that's paid out over a term of 5 to 17 years. Now, I told you guys I was going to nerd out a little bit on this, right? So bear with me. Since 1956, as I mentioned, the city has never had to use other sources of funding to repay the bonds. This allows the city to fund infrastructure investments, and I'll say it again, without raising taxes. Our stellar repayment history gives me the opportunity to share some good news that we got earlier this week. And we want to thank Auditor Kilgore and her team, Director Chris Long and our team, and all those that involved. The City of Columbus, once again, has earned a coveted AAA bond rating. This is a big, big deal. It means investors know that we have some of the most secure debt in the nation. In return, we get a very, very low cost of borrowing. This strategy has saved the city tens of millions of dollars in recent years and will save us considerable amounts of money in the future. So let me take just a second to break down for you what all those big numbers mean for Columbus. Here's a little history. Our voters approved affordable housing bonds in 2019 and in 2022 for the first time ever in the city's history. With this new package, the city will commit $500 million, so twice as much as we have in the past, to support the construction of affordable housing in the city. One of the most powerful ways we can address our housing crisis is to get shovels in the ground and build units for Columbus residents struggling with housing instability. Affordable housing bonds have supported the construction of more than 4,000 rental units in our city, including more than 630 units of permanent supportive housing. This bond proposal doubles down on our commitment to drive continued progress. Today, you can see how previous bond dollars are at work. New construction has begun at Core Place, Mulby Place, Sinclair, Britton Woods 2, Topiary Park, the lofts at 40 Long. Another important part of planning for the future is making sure our citizens are safe, healthy, and have the infrastructure needed for their daily lives. So this new bond package provides $250 million for safety, health, and infrastructure. It includes police facility renovation, just under $43 million, fire apparatus replacement, $50 million, fire facility renovation at about $45 million, and a new municipal court building at $100 million. Past bond sales have provided recent wins in safety, health, and infrastructure, such as $17 million to begin construction of Fire Station 36 and $16 million for the construction of a new Hilltop substation. As mayor, I know the value of our Department of Public Service. It's crucial that we continue to stay connected as we plan for the future and do it in an intentional and thoughtful way. That's why we've asked the voters to approve $400 million for public service that includes almost $61 million for Vision Zero intersection improvements, $101 million for roadway improvements, $110 million for road resurfacing, more than $47 million for pedestrian safety improvements. And when it comes to public service, previous bond dollars have been used for current projects, such as rebuilding and improving Hudson Street between I-71 and Cleveland Avenue, and safety improvements to the intersection of East Broad Street and James Road. Another part of our package provides for our beloved recreation and parks. It's essential for a growing, thriving city to provide green spaces and recreation opportunities for its people. That's why we want to spend $250 million on facility renovations and improvements, almost $76 million of the $250. Street trees, $3.4 million. Recreation centers, $120 million. Park improvements, $3.1 million. New development park improvements, almost $24 million. Some of the things we've used previous bond funds for around our city are the construction of the new Fran Ryan Center on East Broad Street, renovations to Glenwood and Windsor pools, and safer parks and playgrounds and street trees. And last, but certainly not least, Director Ath is in the room, she would make sense. This talk about public utilities for a minute. Our new bond package will provide $500 million for sanitary sewer improvements, $225 million, water improvements, $225 million, street lighting, $20 million, and stormwater system improvements, $30 million. So before I bring up our panel discussion moderator, Mark Ferenchik, and since I have the microphone, I need to remind everybody to think about and practice some good voter hygiene. Get educated, which is part of what you're here today to do. If you're not registered to vote, get registered. If you need to update your registration, please do that and make a plan to vote. We're operating in financially uncertain times. You didn't know the federal government shut down in the last 24 hours. Given the policies of our state and federal governments, this bond package gives us an opportunity to choose our own destiny, invest in ourselves without raising taxes. The beauty of the bond package is we get to invest in infrastructure. The folks that work on the infrastructure, we create jobs, they pay income taxes, that funds basic city services throughout our city. And we get to do all of this without raising taxes. So I look forward to the conversation, and please welcome former Columbus Dispatch reporter and current news director for WOSU, Mark Ferenchik.
Thank you very much, and thanks for everybody for being here today. Appreciate it. Should be a good discussion. First question is going to be for Carlie, actually. Tell us a little bit about what the affordable housing needs are here in Columbus and the region. How many units we're basically down, how many we need, and if the earlier bond packages have helped put a dent in that.
Well, I don't think I deserve the honor of the first question, but thank you. I will take it. And I appreciate the invitation to speak here today, and I want to thank all of our members and sponsors for kind of equipping me with the knowledge to be able to intelligently have this conversation. I do think that Central Ohio as a region, not just Columbus and not just as Franklin County, but as an entire region, is facing a housing challenge like we have never seen before. This is not something us or our parents or our grandparents have encountered. This is new and different and bad. The primary measurement that we look at the Alliance is how many of our families are severely cost burdened. So do you guys know what a healthy payment is? How much of your income you should put towards housing? Ooh, that's not the right answer. 30%, right? A third of your income should go towards housing. By the time a family is giving half of their income, so 1 out of every 2 checks is going either to a landlord or a mortgage company, it's what we call the toxic trade-off range. Because by necessity, you are sacrificing something you need to survive to keep that roof over your head. For our families with kiddos, a lot of times it's food. Mom and dad pay the rent, they make sure the kid is eaten, and everything else gets sacrificed. For our seniors, a lot of times that sacrifice is healthcare. Cutting prescription drugs in half, delaying medical appointments. These things will absolutely shorten your life in the long term. Here in Franklin County alone, it is 52,000 of our families who face that every single day. It's about 1 in 12 of our households. So that is a significant number. I think it's important to look at how it's changing too. So one of the things we do see is that this insecurity is creeping up the income ladder very fast. Right now, to afford just a plain old, not fancy 2-bedroom apartment, right? No swimming pool, no marble countertops, just a roof and walls, you have to earn $28 an hour. Of those of you who are employers, how many of your entry wages start at 20 bucks an hour, let alone 30? Our teachers in Ohio start at about $50,000 a year. That's $8,000 a year short of what they need just to afford an apartment. So this is something that we see affecting a lot of our community, and it is growing.
So that brings me to the next question, which is basically, again, a definition of affordable housing. So that can range anywhere from, again, 30 to 80% of AMI, which is area median income, which depending on where you look, if you're like a one-person household, it's about $30,000 at 30%, and about $61,000 for at 80%. How do you make sure that this affordable housing money is going to go towards housing that supports people who need it the most at the lower range of that area?
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point, Mark. And again, thank CMC for having this discussion. Right, affordability or housing affordability is a spectrum. Carlie just laid it out. It's about 30% of someone's income. So what's affordable to me is different than what's affordable to the mayor or anyone else. But on that spectrum, right, where we are focused is those folks that are making between 30% AMI and 80% AMI, as you said, because these are working folks that we're talking about who are not, because of the shortage of housing that we have, are not able to find a place that they can afford, that's quality, a place that you and I would want to raise our families. And so for us to ensure that we do that and meet this moment, it is continuing to partner and leverage our bond dollars. As the mayor said, we leveraged that money to be able to get 4,000 units. I think there's this misconception that if we just build an entire building, for instance, right, all at 30% AMI, that will help us meet the moment. But that won't get us as many units as we need, because our crisis right now is simply tied to supply and demand. It's basic economics, right? When there is more demand for something and there's less supply, the cost goes up. And so now we have folks that are higher wage earners who are competing for the same unit that someone who is a teacher is competing for. And so for us, it's about how do we, again, go back to our housing strategy, which is to build, preserve, invest, and include, to get more housing stock, remove red tape, and get more of those units online. Because naturally what will happen is as you get more supply, it will become more competitive, and naturally we will get back to more rents that are competitive and affordable for folks. But we have to stay laser focused on, I think, that 30% to 80% AMI and making sure that working folks, if you work in the city of Columbus, you should be able to live in the city of Columbus.
And the only thing I would add, Mark, is it isn't just about the bond package. I know we're here today to focus on that. But this administration is the first administration in the city's history that required affordability to be built into any type of incentives or abatements to receive from the private sector. This administration is leading the way in partnership with council to update our zoning code for the first time in 70 years. There were 375,000 people living in Columbus when this code went into place. Now we have nearly 1 million, and we're going to grow by 1/3 in this region. The other important component to dealing with this supply crisis, and Carlie and Councilmember have been part of this effort as well, is the creating of a regional housing coalition. Because Columbus cannot produce 200,000 units over the next 10 years on our own. We need our brothers and sisters in Upper Arlington and in adjacent counties and in Dublin and Westerville and Reynoldsburg to be part of this effort. So the Regional Housing Coalition is another great example of the Columbus Way, another incredible public-private partnership that will be incubated at the Columbus Partnership the way that One Columbus in 2020 was, over 10 years ago. And our belief is that we can get the public and private to invest $1 billion over the next 10 years. We can, as a region, get this done. I said we'll do half of the region's housing needs over the next 10 years with 100,000 units. I need the rest of the region to meet us with the other half. I'm not asking any one group to do everything, but I am asking everybody to do something and to be part of this regional solution. The way we tackle this supply crisis, the way we reduce homelessness, the way we make our community and our region more affordable, safer, and healthier is to build more housing at every price point as quickly as possible.
Well, along those lines too, what's the status of the discussions with the Upper Arlingtons or Dublins or New Albanys about where that stands right now?
Very productive, very active with the Central Ohio Mayors and City Managers Association. Jeff Fix, who's a Fairfield County Commissioner, is going to be part of and helping to lead the way on the Regional Housing Coalition. Joe St. John, who's the mayor of Sunbury. Both Republicans, by the way, that matters, right? This needs to be a bipartisan regional approach, and these are two Republicans that are committed to growing the right way, because folks, if we don't deal with this supply crisis, the economic trajectory of our region is at risk. One of the reasons we're so competitive is because we are relatively affordable to other fast-growing cities around America, and because of our workforce and talent. So this is an issue that I think 10 years ago CEOs thought was more of a moral issue in housing people. They now know it's an issue of competition. And if they can't attract and retain the best and the brightest from around the country and the world to come to work for their companies because they can't afford to live here and raise their families here, that puts them at a huge competitive disadvantage. And so I'm grateful that Jason Hall, the partnership, and the private sector are stepping up with this regional housing coalition.
You briefly mentioned tax abatements. What role does that play anymore in terms of getting affordable housing built, and should it? I know school board candidates are bringing up tax abatement as an issue. Where do tax abatements stand in the future when it comes to developing affordable housing?
Well, it still remains a critically important tool with both residential, commercial development, but I think it's also important to share facts and truth, even in an era and time when those seem to be few and far between. But only about 5% of the parcels within the Columbus City School District are receiving an incentive and abatement. And although there is a short-term incentive offered, after a period of time, those abatements and incentives roll off. And so you think about what Easton is providing to the Columbus City School District today, after an abatement and incentive has rolled off there, is of significant benefit to the school district. And so we are the first administration, as I said earlier, that has required affordability to be built in to any developments by the private sector that are receiving incentives and abatements. It remains an important tool, but it is land use and zoning code reform, regional housing coalition, continuing to embrace the Link Us efforts around transit supportive infrastructure, transit-oriented development, and incentives have to be part of this to make sure that we're making Columbus more affordable and we deal with this supply crisis.
Really good point, Mayor. That is just one piece of the tool in the toolbox. And it is what is we also did in partnership was remove some of, I think, the loopholes that existed there. Before, in order to get an abatement, there was no affordability requirement for folks that were purchasing homes. And we saw this in so many neighborhoods across our community. And we needed that injection of investment in places like the Near East Side and Franklinton and other places. But now we're at a place where if you are going to receive that tool and that incentive, it has to be affordable. So it's tied to someone's income now for home ownership as well as for rental. And so I think that it is a critical tool that we have to continue to use smartly and wisely. But we have tailored that specifically, right, Mark, to your point, to get at that price range of folks that we are trying to target 30% to 80% AMI, working folks who can't afford their home. And so I think it is a tool in the toolbox, but it's everything else that goes into it. And I know that we're here talking about affordable housing as a big piece of the bond package, but we also have to make sure the rest of our infrastructure keeps up with the growth as well. That is also going to go into affordability. And so it's critical that we have safe, clean drinking water. It's critical that we have street lights and parks and amenities. All of that goes into our quality of life as a region.
If I can add in too, I think that intersectionality is why starting with housing and emphasizing housing is so important. And I think about a lot of this as a parent. I've got a 9-year-old at home, and he's wild but lovely. And we did some research a few years ago, and we found out that if we just keep going down this current trajectory, right, if we don't have this bonds as a tool to use, if we keep going down the path we're on, we'll have another 20,000 of our families who today feel safe, but will slip into housing insecurity by 2040, right? And that is the year that, God willing, Easy is going to be graduating from college to a housing market that looks more like a California than the Columbus that we know. He's going to be making decisions about where to start his career and where to build a family, and those are going to affect the relationship I have with my son, and again, God willing, my grandkids. This is a public good We are building for the future that we want, and we don't usually have as clear-cut of an opportunity to say, well, how can I help? Today we can. Wake up on November 4th and go vote your conscience. Go vote for the future you want.
You think about our competitive advantage, and one of the big things that has made us so competitive is affordability. I think because we're a safe and welcoming community to all, and I think it's because of our people, our workforce. So just think about another part of our community if it was under threat. Let's assume Ohio State and Columbus State were looking to move. What would we do as a community to fight like hell to protect that critical part of our community, our competitive advantage? We would move heaven and earth. And that's what we have to do for housing.
So downtown, the YMCA building's being redeveloped. About 20% of those units towards people making, again, less than $30,000. Should the city be stepping up with some projects and saying, we need a higher percentage of those lower income units? What can the city do? And the developers push back at all saying, we can't afford to do that without either more government funding or we just can't do that. What do you hear?
That's why we got to pass this bond package, Mark. You know, we need to bring unprecedented resources. I think the council member made the point earlier, and folks in the room that are in affordable housing, I see Lark and others, the capital stacks have never been more complex and challenging. And so bringing more resources to bear to get deeper into affordability and be able to build more units at a deeper affordability is absolutely critical. And that's why this is the biggest housing ask and investment in the city's history. We have to go big in the next decade. Every mayor in growing cities around the country, when we talk about this issue, tell me to get started, get ahead of this. You think of these great American cities that probably waited too long: Denver, Austin, Seattle, Portland, Houston. They're all places, Chicago. There are places, San Francisco. Think of these places today where they were 20 years ago. And that's why we have to lead and go at this in the same type of way we do economic development, neighborhood development, and partnerships, whether it's at Nationwide Children's Hospital or OSU Medical Center or West Campus. We have to go big and bold.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head, Mayor. The cost is the cost. I always like to use this adage: there is no affordable 2x4 section at Lowe's. Right? The cost of construction is the cost of construction. And I think what we know now is it's not simply that affordable housing should not be subpar housing. That's right. It has to be quality. And that is what we're focused on. So if we do want to go deeper to that range of 30% of AMI or folks below that, there has to be more subsidy put in, unfortunately, because that's just how the numbers are. There's not a tool out there yet that allows the deal to pencil for developers to do that. And let's be honest, the city can't build this on our own. It's going to take the private sector. We're going to take developers. Developers are not scary people. They're helping to shape this city. Now, if they're getting incentives from us, that is our role to hold them responsible and to be responsible partners in that work. But we need them to meet this moment. And so if we want to go deeper, it is going to take passing this bond package so that we can continue to do that. But I will also say this about affordability. Our strategy is about how do we leverage and get more units into more private development for two reasons. One, we get more units that way, but two, we know what concentrated poverty does. These, and the buildings that we are doing now in partnership with the administration and what council has passed, is even when you do that mix of units, it can't be all one bedrooms, can't be all studios. Has to be a mix across the portfolio of that building. So that means 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms, all at a price point that's affordable, because this is about making sure that everyone, regardless of how much you make, you get to live in a quality neighborhood and that you get to live in a neighborhood of choice. And so this is one about getting more units, but also making sure that that we have diverse neighborhoods from an income standpoint, because that is how we're going to raise families, and that is how we combat poverty long term.
I also think that the word that you use, strategy, is the nail on the head, right? Because one tool cannot fix this whole thing. We talked about zoning. We also need to acknowledge that bonds are bricks and sticks money, right? It builds things. It cannot fund security at a homeless shelter. It cannot fund eviction prevention programming. It cannot enforce fair housing laws. So one of the other parallel things that is happening right now is the Funding Review Advisory Council, which is looking at how our entire community is allocating the resources that we do have at our disposal for the things that are important. And I will, in the interest of regionality, note that this policy has to work in our own cities, in our own suburbs, in our own towns. So one of the things that's top of mind right now is we have a lot of federal workers, up to 80,000 in Ohio alone, who are now going to be losing their paycheck. And we know about 60% of the population lives paycheck to paycheck. So that is a huge risk for eviction. Folks who are working, not getting paid, and not able to keep a roof over their head. But let's fast forward 2 months. This problem is solved. All of those workers are now getting back pay for the time that they were furloughed. Their landlord is still allowed to say, nope, I don't want to take that money anymore. I would rather evict you, because we live in a $1 one-day state, where no matter whether it was your fault, no matter whether you tried to fix it right away, a landlord is allowed to evict you the minute you are back on your rent. City of Columbus has fixed that loophole. Reynoldsburg, Gahanna, Grandview have fixed it. Nobody else has. So how are we all working together to not just bring the resources, but the policy together to create that stability that is deep and predictable and safe for everybody?
Are there parts of the city that need affordable housing more than others? And if so, where are they? And what will the city do to make sure that those needs are met?
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons we took our CRA citywide about a year or so ago, because, you know, my neighborhood in the Knolls, and I would say Clintonville, my Billy buddies would correct me and tell me that I live on the wrong side of the river now in northwest Columbus, but near Clintonville in the northwest side, just north of Riverside, there were incentives and support for affordable housing in place. And so what happened is there were certain neighborhoods that all of the affordable housing development was taking place, and other parts of the city wasn't seeing that. And so the plan with the citywide CRA is to make sure that if housing was our top priority and housing affordability was our top priority, that it made sense and that it could work financially in neighborhoods throughout the city. Because there are some neighbors and neighborhoods who felt like they were shouldering the entire housing burden, particularly affordable housing burden, all by themselves. And to the council member's point earlier about concentrations of poverty and making sure that we have mixed neighborhoods, mixed income neighborhoods of choice for folks throughout the city, that was another reason we made the change.
And I'll say, you know, it's not one particular neighborhood. We want affordability across the entire city, but this crisis that we are talking about, every neighborhood will be unaffordable in the next 10 years if we do not get ahead of this. I mean, I think about when we did our work, Mayor, in Linden, when we started in Linden. The average rent in Linden at that time for a 2-bedroom, single-family home was $650. Today, it's closer to $1,100 or $1,200. And that is in a span of less than 10 years. And when we talk about this supply and this demand issue, what happens is that naturally occurring affordable housing, where it was once the market said that you could only get $700, and that's what you could get. Well, the market is now saying I can get $1,200 by just putting a coat of paint on and changing the carpet. Then put in granite countertops. I still got my Formica counters and my white refrigerator, and it's still now twice as much. And so part of our strategy too with our bond dollars, Mayor, is preservation, is making sure how are we investing in holding the current housing stock that we have so that we don't lose that along the way.
And also, not just rental, but home ownership and long-term, deep, permanently affordable home ownership.
Thank you so much. It's CMC's longstanding tradition to take audience questions. We'll move to questions from our live stream and in-person audiences in just a few minutes. If you have a question, please make your way over to the microphone now. If you're joining us on YouTube, please type your questions into the chat. Before we take audience questions, though, I have one more question for you. You said that this bond package will be transformative. What are you hoping to see, not only just in the next 5 years or so, but down the road? How will this build upon what's going on in the city right now?
100,000 units in the city limits, in line, in the marketplace in the next 10 years, slowing down the rate of cost increases and making Columbus more affordable and competitive. That is what this is all about. And we can do it.
Yeah, I would echo that, and again would say the affordable housing is critical and key. But there are 5 issues that you'll see. We need you to vote yes on all 5 of them. Because again, I think critical to housing is also the other infrastructure that's necessary for us to meet this moment. Safe, clean drinking water. I think when we say transformative, what's also going to come out of this bond package is our 4th water plant that will be able to help us meet the capacity that we are seeing. The investment is going to come. We have already met the question of if we will seize the moment. The question now is who will seize the moment. And I think for us, the mayor will say that if you live in the city of Columbus, you should be able, if you work in the city of Columbus, you should be able to live in the city of Columbus. And that is who we are fighting for. And all of this is about strategy, and it's about governing. And that is how we've gotten to where we are today, is because of the strategies that we put in place. So this doesn't just happen. So I want to thank the mayor, and I'm going to embarrass him a little bit, because if you didn't see the news, today Governing Magazine, which is a national magazine, has named our mayor as one of the top public officials in the country, and there are only 5 of them. And so congratulations to you, but again, that goes back to our strategy as a city, is that we work in partnership to get these things done. And so I just want to thank you, Mayor, and say congratulations and embarrass you a little bit.
So on the question of transformation, I think it's really important to be clear that this is the 3rd bond package, and the first 2 have been transformative. So when I started this work, we had 54,000 people who were severely housing cost burdened. That number has gone down 5%. It has gone down despite a pandemic. It has gone down despite an economic decline, and it has declined despite record growth in our city. There is no one else in the country who is doing that. And that is not exclusively the bonds. That is the comprehensive strategy that is blending all of these things together for systemic change. So what I want to see is to continue that momentum and to keep pulling that number down. And I think it gets harder, and it puts more importance on this vote because we are entering a period of austerity at the State House. We are potentially entering a period of recession at the national economy. What we have the choice of is, do we sustain that momentum here locally, and do we buck what's happening everywhere else, or do we follow them down? And I think that we find a way to stay strong, and we stay in the top 5 of all of the lists.
There's no one coming to save us. We are the ones we've been waiting for.
So Doug,
It's our future.
you've been curating questions online, and also there's folks waiting at the microphone. So what's our first question?
Mark, thank you very much, and thank you so much to today's panelists for joining us. Great conversation. We're grateful to have all of you in the room with us today. Please do join us here at the microphone. We'll try to get to as many audience questions as we can. If you're watching online, type your questions in the chat. We'll try to get to as many of those also as we can. Great questions at CMC always have 2 things in common, don't they? They can be asked in just a sentence or 2. And what punctuation mark does a question end with? Ends with a question mark, yes. Here's our first one. I'll launch us off. Let's see. Steve Reynolds asks a question for Carlie. How do we get more of the suburbs, exurbs, and rural areas engaged in addressing the shortage of workforce housing units across the region?
Yeah, so I will say too, I think a lot of our suburbs really are standing up, and they're moving in ways that are appropriate for them, right? They're pulling the levers that are within their control. So Reynoldsburg updated their zoning code half a decade ago. Hilliard has a housing commission that is working now. We are seeing some of that momentum already. I do think, to the broader question though of how do we engage more people, it's important to talk about what housing will do, not just what it can avoid, right? We know what that doomsday looks like. And I think the mayor put it in really good remarks. Our doomsday isn't that we become a California or a New York. It's that we become a Detroit. It's that the jobs and the economy don't come here anymore. That's what our but for is. I think being more optimistic, though, about what we stand to gain is really important. So we talked a little bit about teachers. I have a 9-year-old. He's got picture day today. That was a whole thing. He's in 4th grade. We know that 78% of educators nationwide say that housing insecurity is in their classroom. So he's not cost burdened. We're very fortunate. His mom's a lawyer and a loudmouth. I'm doing all right. But that instability is in his classroom, and it is absolutely affecting the quality of education he gets. But if we were to cut our affordable housing gap just in half, right? Not moving the earth and the moon, but we just do half of what we should be doing anyways. We know that in Central Ohio, we would see 6 school districts that lift their state of Ohio performance grade by an entire letter. They would go from being C districts to B districts, or B districts to A districts, right? So my kid isn't housing cost burden, but you know what that is going to do for his quality of education and for my property values if we can lift that entire ship up? We would have 3,000 more 3rd graders who are reading at proficiency, right? 3,000 without ever touching a book. 3,000 more of our kids are going to be ready for high school and then college and then the workforce. These are the kind of system-wide changes. When we talk about housing as a public good and why the bonds as one particular financial structure are so important, it's because this benefits every single one of us. And I can rattle off the same statistics and how housing benefits from a healthcare and a community well-being perspective and from an economic development and jobs perspective. So that was a long answer to a short question. Let's talk about what's good.
And I would just add to that for suburban partners, I think what we're saying is we need folks building more. And I want to underscore what Carlie said, it's what's best for your community. We've already raised our hand and said what we were going to do. Density doesn't have to look the same as it does in Columbus as it would in, say, Groveport, right? And so for us, it's about building more housing. If that is at a different price point, that's helping our strategy right now because we need more units. So I would say to our suburban partners, do what you can, but we have to build more. It has to be denser. It doesn't have to be 20-story towers, right? But it can be 2 units on a lot. I think those are some of the creative ways that our suburban partners can meet this moment with us.
My name is Brian Urbanski with the Aubrey Affordable Housing Foundation. And our company, we're able to house some of the most vulnerable and low-income members of our society. And I agree with the panel that we absolutely, positively need more housing, and we've needed it for a long time. But we have about 220,000 rental units in Columbus, and last year, the Columbus Dispatch reported that 25,000 evictions occurred right here in our own backyard. I'm curious to find out, the bond package is going to hopefully support emergency rental assistance funds that have now been depleted from the federal government. Mayor, can you please maybe expand on how much of that has been earmarked for emergency rental assistance and the folks that are that are currently housed that are going to be experiencing that financial difficulty that Carlie was talking about here in the near future?
I can jump in if I think I've been cut off. No. So bonds can't do programming. Let's be super clear. This is governed by Ohio law. Bonds are bricks and sticks money. I talked about the Funding Review Advisory Committee. I think that's one point. I also want to be clear that if we want to have a robust housing subsidy program, which is important for people who cannot work, whether because of age or physical ability, that is a federal government role, and we need to find ways to have that conversation up the ladder too.
And I'll say to that point, yes, bond dollars can only be used for bricks and sticks, but one of the things where we're getting creative, it goes back to that strategy of preserving that naturally occurring affordable housing. So looking at how do we use these upcoming dollars in a meaningful way that gets us up ahead of stream, to bring landlords along with us so that we can invest in their properties. But if we're going to do that, you got to come alongside of us and you got to continue to have affordable rents. So that's one way I think using these bond dollars in a unique way will help us to preserve naturally occurring affordable housing. But yes, we cannot use bond dollars for emergency rental assistance or any type of operating need.
Thanks for bailing me out. I figured that was the case, and Aaron gave me that look from the table. I would say that I'm very proud of what the city has done in investing in emergency rental assistance over the last couple of years, the largest investment that I think we've ever made as a city, keeping more people in their homes. Obviously, that money has run out. More cuts coming at the federal and unfortunately probably state level as well, and the city can't fill all those gaps from our general fund budget. No city can, no state can. And so this bond package will help us deal with the supply crisis, but it will not help deal with the human service crisis that I think is looming based on policies out of Washington and the State House. Elections have consequences, folks. So the next time somebody asks you about voting or not voting, there are going to be a lot of consequences for some of the most poor and vulnerable neighbors we have, and that's why we have to step up and support and do what we can locally.
I'm Amy Claiborne, president of Families Flourish. I'd like to start with a huge thank you for your leadership to all three of you. Without that leadership, we wouldn't be here today talking about a bond package and talking about the future. My question is, we need to have inclusive housing, and so thank you. I'm hearing those messages, and this is new. This is so critical for everybody in our community to be able to live and work and go to school with people who are not just like yourself. And so how do we, what are the new tools needed to ensure that we have this inclusive communities, diverse communities everywhere in the region? And right now with the tax abatements, the rents are still not coming down enough. We need more support so rents can actually meet the needs of people who are working. It's still too high. And have mixed income housing everywhere, so incentives for the builders so that they don't just go out and build, this is for the wealthy people or this is for the higher income people. It has to be for all incomes so everybody can thrive and flourish. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for that question and for all the work that you do in this space. I think you hit a lot of it already, right? I think that some of the reforms that we've done in partnership with the administration around our CRA policy. So now if you get any type of incentive, there has to be some type of affordability into it, right? That's ways that we can do that. Land use and zoning is a really key, a critical piece of that. We did phase 1 of zoning. We are now in phase 2, and eventually we'll really rezone into the rest of the city, because if we can unlock that land use piece, and I think that's where our suburban partners can come in as well. That's how we right some of these wrongs. A lot of this concentration of poverty that we see is because of policies of decades past, right? Redlining. And intentionally disinvestment in certain areas of our city. And so it's a comprehensive thing that all has to work together. Bonds, though, are a critical piece of that, of getting more supply online.
Well, and I'm going to give a way nerdy answer. That's probably an overgeneralization to begin with, but if you're building private market housing, right, you're just a plain old housing creator or developer, you can afford to take out a mortgage for about 70% of the construction costs. It's that last 30% that really decides what everything's going to look like. And right now, the real only answer for a lot of folks is private equity. They'll cover that last 30%. But you want my private equity money, you maximize rents to the inch of their life, and that's your only choice. But bonds, especially at the scale we're talking about right now, give us the ability to do more creative financing, right? So what can we do to take out private equity? How can we supplant their influence in the housing market? What can we do to reduce the effect of institutional investors in our housing market from a funding, a financing strategy? These are things that we haven't yet had the resources to really take the top off the car and figure out how fast it can go. But now, God willing, knock wood, we can.
Dr. Beth Whitted, I'm wondering what's being done to hold landlords, both local landlords and out-of-town landlords, accountable to keep their units livable? Thanks.
Well, one of the things we've done, and I announced this in the State of the City address, is the creation of housing stability within the Department of Development, and also launching efforts for more transparency and accountability with landlords. We also have partnerships with legal aid to help protect tenants who have been taken advantage of and that are unjustifiably being forced out of their apartments and their rental units. So we're doing a number of things that have, some of which have just come online recently, and I know the council members working on some other things to protect tenants as well. I don't know if you would speak to those.
Yeah, absolutely, Mayor, and you're absolutely right. And invite you, we'll get a date for the next hearing for our rental registry. So one of the things that my office is championing in our Housing for All package that council launched 3 years ago now is a rental registry. And the purpose of that rental registry is really twofold. It is one, for us to get a clear snapshot data on how many actual housing rental units we have in the city. We have guesstimates right now, right? And then the other thing is to have more transparency and accountability with folks who are providing housing. I think that it is clear to me that housing is a human right, not just simply a commodity. And so if you're going to be in this space, we thank you for being a housing provider, but if you're going to be in this space, there's going to be regulations, and we want not only that someone can afford their unit, but that it's healthy and it's safe for their family.
About 2 minutes left for one final quick question.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being with us, Carlie, Nick, Mayor Ginther, and Mark. My name is Tony Bell, and I really appreciate you talking about partnership and housing affordability. Columbus Landmarks Foundation, which locally focuses on preservation and lasting design, as you mentioned, Topiary Park Crossing was a finalist for our Recce Awards. We have the Building Art Studio, which is helping high school students at Fort Hayes learn masonry, et cetera. Those students are about 2 years from being in the workforce. I'm curious to know how you're seeing some of our local workforce efforts, right? Because we're doing this because we want them to support building houses. How are you seeing the local workforce efforts being able to make some of this important, not impossible because you're leading the issue, dream come true?
Well, I appreciate the question, and we've done a number of things, including a internship program within our Building and Zoning Services Department, where we've hired our first Columbus City School graduate out of Fort Hayes, and there are more that are part of the internship program now. But our goal, we just recently did a groundbreaking on the Near East Side in conjunction with members of the Pan-Atlantic Council, and our goal is to get more young people from Central City neighborhoods where these bond dollars are going to be leveraged and new housing units are going to be built, to get in on the action, build their skills, give them access to, the training programs and the opportunities to make incredible wages, build great careers. Many folks don't realize that when you go through these training and apprenticeship programs, not only can you make incredible wages, you can come out of those apprenticeship programs, whether they're union or non-union, with associate's degrees, debt-free. These are incredible opportunities. So love the idea, want to continue to work with you on that, because what's really important for us is that as we grow, the people that were born here see themselves in the future of the city as much of those that are coming here. And that's what this is all about.
We have to end it there because we're out of time. So I'm going to turn it over to Sophia for concluding remarks.
All right. I hope everyone found today's conversation incredibly informative. When we think about civic participation, every single week we host conversations just like this, and there are some key topics that are always big conversations for community members. One is housing, transportation, and workforce development. Mayor Ginther, at the beginning of today's conversation, you talked about this is an opportunity for us to invest in ourselves. And one, for everyone who's in the audience, you're investing in yourself by educating yourself on what's happening in our community. For those who are tuning in online, you're doing the exact same. I'm going to invite our audience, and as well as those who are tuning online, to consider investing in yourself by sharing this conversation with your neighbors, sharing this conversation with those who you work with. But most importantly, as Mayor Ginther shared, get educated, get registered, and make a plan to vote. We all have a decision on how we want Central Ohio to look, to grow, to feel, And that starts with education, but it also includes making sure that you're registered to vote, that you understand the issues and the impact that it has in our community. With that being said, we are so incredibly grateful for today's conversation, for the Downtown Columbus Incorporated for providing parking to each of the individuals who are here in the audience, to our presenting sponsor of our live stream, the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation, for our live stream partner, the Columbus Dispatch, and most importantly, to the National Veteran Memorial and Museum for hosting us, and a very, very, very special thank you to our panelists, Councilmember Nick Bankston, Carlie Booth, and Mayor Andrew Ginther, and our host, Mark Ferenchik. Thank you all for a wonderful discussion today. All right, now we're doing something a little special here at the Columbus Metropolitan Club. We wanted to not only have conversations on Wednesday, but we're doing something a little bit different. This Friday, so in 2 days, I hope that you can join us because we are hosting a happy hour event at Night Shift Pre-Party at the Pizzuti. So please make plans to visit us. You can go to our website, visit us for Night Shift. It's going to be a wonderful conversation with the Columbus Museum of Art. We'll be there. There'll be drinks and lots of education and fun. And then more importantly, I hope that you can join us this next Wednesday right here at the National Veterans Memorial Museum for our October 8th lunch forum, Joy is Resistance, Queer Power in an Unequal World. We're really excited about that panel. So if you can come back next Wednesday, we'll be right here. Lastly, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you have a great afternoon, and thanks so much.